Hi everyone, it's your everyday non-white guy here, Harry, and we are going to be covering trans women in sports, namely Leah Thomas and the very brave Riley Gaines, who stood up against Leah and the ridiculous and unfair, I don't even know what you call it, nonsense that allows trans women like Leah Thomas, who have a clear advantage to take part in all types of sports. Well, Leah is a swimmer, and she totally destroyed every single one of her or him natural biological counterparts, including Riley Gaines. And we got a short clip of Caitlyn Jenner speaking about all the absolute nonsense of trans women in sports, and it's quite interesting hearing from Caitlyn because obviously before she was Caitlyn, she was Bruce, an Olympic athlete. So I think that holds a lot of salt. Someone like Caitlyn Jenner speaking about it. So let's watch the clips, and you can see me react afterwards.
My story is by now well known. I was a student at University of Kentucky, where I was also a member of the women's swim team, finishing my collegiate career as a 12-time NCAA All-American, a 5-time SEC champion, still the SEC record holder in the 200 butterfly, making me one of the fastest Americans of all time. In March of 2022, female swimmers from around the country and I were forced to compete at NCAAs against Leah, formerly Will Thomas. We watched as this male swam to a women's national title, beating out the most impressive and accomplished female swimmers in the nation, including Olympians and American record holders. Despite tying down to the 100th with Thomas in the 200 freestyle, I was denied the trophy because the NCAA claimed it was necessary for Thomas to hold the trophy when photos were being taken. It was clear to me, my teammates, and my competitors that they had reduced everything we had worked our entire lives for down to a photo op to validate the feelings and the identity of a male. But that's not all. In addition to losing out on opportunities to Thomas, we also had to share a locker room and change in front of this 6'4", fully intact, naked male. And as I've testified previously, we were not forewarned of this arrangement, we were not asked for our consent, and we did not give our consent to this exposure and to be exploited. Unfortunately, Thomas was not a one-off. Across the country and in various sports, males are entering women's athletic competitions, being given spots on women's teams, and being granted entry to our locker rooms. There are numerous documented instances of males competing not just in women's swimming, but also in women's track, cross country, basketball, volleyball, field hockey, and other sports at all levels of competition. This issue is incredibly underreported for various reasons. But common sense Americans know intuitively that this is not fair to women. And science, of course, supports that instinct. In fact, studies consistently show males have about a 10 to 12% athletic advantage over females. This gap is evident in almost every sport and at every level of competition. Yes, hormone therapy can narrow this gap, but it cannot close it. And studies consistently demonstrate that surgery and testosterone suppression do not reduce male athletic performance to normal female levels. Take Thomas, for example. He was mediocre against the men at best, ranking 400ths and 500ths nationally, then dominating all of the women in the entire country by body lengths, might I add, in a matter of a year. Not only do women have to worry about losing opportunities and being exploited in locker rooms, allowing men into women's sports also puts girls at greater risk of injury. In September of last year, North Carolina high school volleyball player Peyton McNabb suffered serious injury after a trans-identified male player spiked a ball at her head, rendering her unconscious. Peyton experienced extensive trauma to her head and neck and long-term concussion symptoms. Still to this day, a year and 3-ish months later, she is still partially paralyzed on her right side. Her vision is impaired, her memory is impaired, and she isn't playing college sports like she had dreamed of for herself. Just a few weeks ago in Massachusetts, a male player on the Swampscott High School field hockey women's team injured an opposing player with a shot to the face, sending the female athlete to the hospital with significant facial and dental injuries. Injuries, of course, can and do happen when females are playing against other females, but allowing men to play women's sports increases the likelihood and severity of such injuries. That's one of the reasons why, for 50 years, federal Title IX regulations have allowed schools to offer separate teams for women and men when the sports are contact sports or involve competitive skill. In April of 2023, the Department of Education proposed a rule that, if adopted, would reverse this presumption. Under the proposed rule, women's sports aren't just for women. They're for anyone who simply says they are a woman, unless a particular school can demonstrate to the satisfaction of the Department of Education that keeping a particular team female meets important educational objectives. The new rule mandates that every school in the country must demonstrate the unfairness of male participation on each specific women's team that they offer and develop rules that minimize harm to trans-identified athletes. But what about the harm to us? Who is working to minimize the harm done to female athletes? Let me be perfectly clear. A school that knowingly allows a male athlete to take a spot on a women's team or allows a male athlete to take the field in a women's game is denying a female student athletic opportunity, and that is sex-based discrimination, and it violates Title IX, regardless of what the new regulations might say. It is my sincere hope that members of this committee will take action to stop the Biden administration's illegal and administrative rewrite of Title IX. Of course, there is a place for everyone, regardless of gender identity, regardless of sexual orientation, regardless of race or what sports you play. There's a place for everyone to play sports in this country. But unsafe, unfair, and discriminatory practices towards women must stop. Inclusion cannot be prioritized over safety and fairness. And Ranking Member Lee, if my testimony makes me transphobic, then I believe your opening monologue makes you a misogynist. Thank you.
the beginning when it comes to trans women in women's sports. From the beginning, I've honestly been against it. I have always tried to protect women in women's sports. I think it can become terribly unfair for women, and honestly, I don't want to destroy women's sports. We had the big issue here in the States with Leah Thomas last year, and honestly, we won that battle. Eventually, World Swimming went to ban. They said you had to have had transition before the age of 12. Why? Because the big thing is not so much hormone levels later on in life. It is, did you go through male puberty? Leah Thomas had big hands, big cardiovascular system. It was just totally unfair and it had to stop. And we won that battle. I have been from the...
Whew. So some pretty powerful viewing there, really, especially Riley Gaines. And you can see the struggle in her and how she's trying to hold back and to say, like, come on, can't you recognise what all this bullshit, and I don't like to swear, but it is bullshit. You are allowing a man, Leah Thomas, who was a third-rate male swimmer, and then suddenly identifies as a woman, and then is literally taking titles from a genuine biological women swimmers, and it's just absolutely ridiculous, let alone all the nonsense that happened in the changing rooms. You're on about making transgender people feel comfortable in a changing room. No, I'm not being funny. I can't imagine the horror and how icky they felt being faced with having to change in the changing rooms with a man 6'4", I believe, fully intact. No. Would you want to watch a 6'4" man try and squeeze into a cosy, or I don't know what you call it, a swimming costume in America? It's ridiculous, and this is what really annoys me. So women's rights out the door, just to make a small minority of people comfortable. And it's like, you are selling off women's safety, you are selling off women's sports, just to make a very, very small minority of people happy. And it's like, who are you pandering to there? I can't stand it, because I speak as a gay man, and some of the best friends that I've ever had growing up and even out have been women. And you become allies, and this is what really annoys me, especially in the gay community. We're all there saying about trans rights, blah, 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 all this, all that. If it wasn't for our mothers and sisters that really helped us finding out who we are, we'd be nowhere. And this is what annoys me, and this is why I'm so passionate about this. You can't expect to take rights from one group of people just to give them to another, because it doesn't work like that. And ask anyone, would you rather let your child be in a room with a man or a woman? 9 times out of 10, they're going to say a woman. And we all know why that is, don't we? So I can't imagine the horror and the hardship these young swimmers faced, only wanting to do what they were born to do. They spent years and years training to become swimmers and athletes, only to be faced by 6'4" Leah Thomas, tucking whatever in a swimsuit, and then going out swimming, only to be told, well, no, Leah won, Leah's first. And it's like, come on, this idiocracy of it just totally blows my mind. Whew. But I'm glad to see Caitlyn Jenner speaking out against it and actually doing something with her platform and saying, no, this is wrong. I just wish more people would respect Caitlyn Jenner, because she's out here saying it how it is. Do you know what I mean? And all this, I know there was some talk about, well, it's okay if they've not been through puberty and they're only 12 and blah, blah, blah. That comes under, so you're going to allow a child who's been on puberty blockers and whatever else to swim. I mean, to me, that's child abuse. Allowing a child not to grow up, not to experience functioning genitalia, not to be able to have children and all stuff like that, that's child abuse, in my opinion anyway. So those are my thoughts on that. Oh, quite a heavy video this one is. So probably one of the longer ones I've done. As you can see, it's a new YouTube channel. So this is why everything looks a bit janky. The sound's a little bit janky. The light's a little bit janky. I'm probably a little bit janky because I'm not used to speaking on camera. But any pointers or opinions, as long as they're nice and not too nasty, I'd appreciate it. And if you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And if not, I'll still carry on going. So thanks everyone for watching, and bye. I do mean that. Thumbs up.